Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're going to be diving into something that every safety pro needs to know about.
Absolutely.
And that is OSHA's rules for recording hearing loss cases.
It's important.
It's important. It can be a little bit of a maze, though.
Yeah, it can be.
So we're here to make sense of it all for you.
Yeah, we're aiming to give you some clear takeaways and practical tips to make sure that you can confidently apply these regulations and protect your workforce.
Yeah. And, we always like to bring you the source material to look at.
Right.
So for today, we've got two great sources.
Okay.
First, we're going to be looking at excerpts from the official OSHA website, specifically Section 1904.90, recording criteria for cases involving occupational hearing loss.
Right.
And then to make it even clearer, we also have a video summary from Safety One Source that breaks it all down in plain English.
Great resources.
Yeah. So, a lot of safety professionals might think that anytime an employee has any hearing loss, it's automatically recordable, but it's actually more nuanced than that.
Absolutely.
So that's where the concept of a standard threshold shift comes in, right?
Right. Yeah.
What exactly does that mean?
So a standard threshold shift, or STS, is essentially a measurable change in an employee's hearing.
Okay.
Compared to their baseline.
Got it.
And specifically, it is an average shift of 10 decibels or more at 2,000, 3,000, and 4,000 hertz.
Okay, so it's not just any change in hearing.
Correct.
It has to be at those specific frequencies.
Yes.
And above that certain level.
Exactly.
So I'm guessing that's where that baseline audiogram becomes important.
Exactly. Think of a baseline audiogram as a snapshot of the employee's hearing before they start working in a noisy environment.
Okay.
And then you can compare that to their later tests, and then you can see if there's been a significant shift.
That makes sense.
Yep.
So we have this baseline. We're looking for shifts at those frequencies.
Yeah.
And then, wait a minute.
Yeah.
The Safety One Source video mentions that an STS alone isn't always recordable.
Right.
That seems a little surprising.
Yeah, it might seem counterintuitive, but there's actually another requirement.
Okay.
So not only do you need that 10 decibel shift, but the employee's hearing level in the affected ear needs to be at least 25 decibels above what's considered normal hearing.
Oh, wow.
And again, we're looking at the average at 2,000, 3,000, and 4,000 hertz.
So you could have like a pretty noticeable shift, but if their overall hearing is still pretty good,
yes,
it might not be recordable.
That's exactly right. It's like having two hurdles to clear.
Wow.
You need to have both the STS and that 25 decibel hearing level.
Okay.
Both of those have to be met.
So that's something important for safety pros to keep in mind.
Absolutely.
I know another question that comes up a lot is about age. We know that hearing naturally declines as we get older.
Right.
So how does OSHA factor that into all of this?
That's a great question. OSHA does allow you to adjust for age when you're calculating that initial standard threshold shift.
Oh, okay.
And they have tables to help you. They have tables in Appendix F of 29 CFR 1910.95.
Got it.
So that guides you through that calculation.
All right. So we can adjust for age when looking for that initial shift.
Right.
But what about that 25 decibel hearing level requirement?
Okay.
Does age factor into that at all?
So this is where it gets tricky, and it's a common point of confusion.
Okay.
Age adjustment only applies to the STS calculation, not to that separate 25 decibel hearing level assessment.
So we can't just write off hearing loss as just being due to age.
Exactly.
We really have to look at everything.
Absolutely. And speaking of looking at the full picture, OSHA also allows for retesting.
Retesting.
Yes.
Why would we need to retest someone's hearing?
So let's say you get an initial audiogram that seems to show a recordable STS. Before you officially log it, you might want to confirm those results, especially if there are any questions or concerns.
So it's like a double check.
Exactly.
Okay. What are the rules around retesting?
So OSHA allows you to retest within 30 days of that first test. And this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
If the retest shows that the initial STS wasn't actually there.
Okay.
Meaning that the shift resolved, you don't have to record it on the OSHA 300 log.
Wow. So retesting can actually change whether a case is recordable or not.
Yes, it can.
That seems like an important safety net.
It is.
For both the employee and the employer.
Absolutely. And there's even more good news.
Okay.
Let's say you do initially record a case.
All right.
But then later testing shows that the STS was temporary.
Okay.
Meaning it returned back to normal.
Got it.
You're allowed to erase or line out that entry on the log.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
I was starting to get a little worried that every little shift would be like a permanent record or something.
Yeah. OSHA guidelines are designed to be fair and accurate.
Okay, good.
But remember, all of this is based on the assumption that the hearing loss is actually work-related.
Right, because not every instance of hearing loss is caused by their job. So how do we go about figuring out if it's truly occupational?
That's where things get a little more complex.
Okay.
And we'll dive into that next.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah. Yeah, determining work-relatedness for hearing loss can be where a lot of safety professionals get tripped up.
Yeah.
It's not always so straightforward.
Yeah. It's like playing detective a little bit.
Right.
Like we got to gather all the clues and figure out, is it their job or is it something else entirely?
Yeah, exactly.
Where do we even start?
Well, you're right. It does take some investigative work, and our Safety One Source video actually gives a helpful framework for this.
Okay.
So first, you want to look at the worker's noise exposure on the job.
Okay.
So that means thinking about the noise levels they're exposed to, how long those exposures last,
Right.
and what kind of hearing protection they use, if they use it.
And if they use it consistently?
Right, exactly.
So, if someone's working in a really loud environment and they're not wearing the right protection or they're not wearing it all the time, it seems pretty likely that at least part of their hearing loss is because of their job.
Exactly. But then it gets kind of tricky because we also have to consider other factors that might be contributing to that hearing loss.
Like what?
So think about age, like we talked about before, but also things like family history of hearing loss, certain medications, they might be taking even hobbies that involve loud noises.
Okay.
Like going to concerts or shooting guns without hearing protection. All of that stuff comes into play.
So it sounds like we really need to get a complete picture of their life, not just what's happening at work.
Precisely. And that's why involving a medical professional is so important.
Right. Because they're going to look at their, medical history.
Exactly.
Do an exam and really help us get to the bottom of things.
Yeah. Physicians and other licensed healthcare providers, they have a really crucial role to play in this. They can perform specialized hearing tests. They can review the employee's overall health and then make a professional judgment about whether or not that occupational noise exposure was a significant factor or if it made a pre-existing condition worse.
It sounds like that medical opinion carries a lot of weight.
It does.
What happens if they say that the hearing loss is not work-related?
Then you don't have to record it on the OSHA 300 log.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
That makes things easier.
Yeah, exactly.
It really simplifies things.
It does.
So, okay, let's say we've done our due diligence, we've gathered all the information, we talked to the doctor, and we've determined that, this hearing loss case is work-related.
Okay.
It meets all of OSHA's criteria. What do we do? How do we actually log it?
Well, you just create a new entry on the OSHA 300 log.
Okay.
Just like you would for any other injury or illness.
Okay. Is there anything specific we need to do for hearing loss? Any special boxes to check?
Yes, this is important. So there's actually a dedicated column on the OSHA 300 log specifically for hearing loss. So you want to make sure you check that box. So it's categorized and tracked correctly.
It's not enough to just record it. We got to make sure it's very clearly identified as hearing loss.
It seems like a small detail.
Right.
But it's really crucial for maintaining accurate records and for analyzing trends over time.
Speaking of trends, going through this deep dive, it's making me think about the bigger picture of occupational hearing loss. Why is this such a big deal? It doesn't always seem as dramatic or as immediate as some other workplace injuries.
Right. That's a really important point. Hearing loss often happens gradually.
Yeah.
So people might not realize how bad it is.
Right.
Until it's pretty advanced.
Right.
They might just think, I'm just getting older.
Right. And unlike a broken leg or something, you can't see hearing loss.
Right.
It's invisible.
Exactly.
It's easy to overlook.
Yeah. But the long-term consequences can be devastating.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It can affect communication, social interaction, job performance, all sorts of things.
And it can lead to isolation and depression.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really important to be proactive and prevent hearing loss from happening in the first place.
So what can employers do to better protect their workers?
Well, the first step is identifying and assessing noise hazards.
Okay.
So, we need to know where are those loud noises coming from, how loud are they, how long are workers exposed, and are the existing control measures adequate?
So it sounds like a noise survey is like the foundation.
Exactly. And once you have that information, you can start implementing those control measures.
Right.
And there are different strategies, and they're often used in combination.
Like what kinds of things?
So there are engineering controls which aim to reduce the noise at the source.
Okay.
So quieter machinery or sound dampening materials.
Got it.
Then there are administrative controls which limit the worker's exposure.
Okay.
So that could mean like rotating workers out of noisy areas,
Right.
or scheduling tasks differently.
And of course, there's hearing protection.
Absolutely. But it's not just about providing it.
It's about making sure they wear it correctly and consistently.
Right.
And that takes training and education.
Actually, it's not just like, okay, here's your earplugs, good luck.
Right.
We have to make sure they understand the risks and how to use it properly, and to report any, changes in their hearing early on.
You're spot on. It's a multifaceted approach.
Yeah.
And it requires a commitment from everyone, from management to frontline workers.
It really ties back to, protecting people's livelihoods and their well-being.
Absolutely.
Which is something I think all safety professionals, can get behind.
Yeah, absolutely. And this brings up another interesting point that's particularly relevant today.
Okay.
How can technology help us improve our hearing conservation programs?
Oh, that's a good question. Like, we're in an age where technology seems to offer a solution for everything.
Right.
How can we use it to, be more effective at protecting workers' hearing?
Well, there are a ton of possibilities.
Okay.
So, for example, we now have really sophisticated noise monitoring systems.
That can actually track noise levels in real time.
Wow.
And alert workers when they're exceeding safe limits.
That's amazing. So no more relying on just once a year we come in and do a noise survey.
Exactly. We can get more accurate data more frequently and make adjustments as needed.
Wow.
And on top of that, there are also apps and software programs that can help us manage audiometric testing, data track worker training, and generate all sorts of reports.
So technology can make our jobs a lot easier.
It can.
And then that frees up more time for us to focus on the human side of things, like training and creating a culture of safety.
I completely agree. Technology is a powerful tool, but it's only as effective as the people who are using it.
It's about finding that balance.
Yeah.
Leveraging technology, but never forgetting that, at the end of the day, we're talking about real people.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's all about people at the end of the day.
Yeah, this has been a really eye-opening deep dive, I think.
It has been.
We've gone from, the nitty-gritty details of OSHA regulations to, the broader impact of hearing loss on people's lives.
Absolutely.
So before we wrap up, I want to go back to those key takeaways for safety professionals.
Okay.
What are the top 3 things they should remember about OSHA's recording criteria for occupational hearing loss?
All right. So first and foremost, remember that 2-pronged approach we talked about.
Yeah.
You need both a standard threshold shift of 10 dB or more at 2,000, 3,000, and 4,000 hertz.
Right.
And a total hearing level of 25 dBs or more in the affected ear.
So it's not enough to just have one or the other. You got to have both.
Exact. Both criteria need to be met.
Okay. What's number 2?
Number 2, age adjustments are important, but remember they only apply to that initial STS calculation, not to the 25 dB hearing level requirement.
Yeah, that's a big one.
It is.
That trips people up.
It does. A lot of people get confused about that.
All right. And number 3?
And finally, remember that work-relatedness is key.
Right.
Not all hearing loss is caused by the work environment.
So we need to be those detectives. Gather all the clues.
Yep.
And figure out, is it truly occupational or are there other things going on?
Exactly. And often that means, talking to a doctor.
Right.
Getting a medical professional involved to help make that determination.
Awesome. Great recap.
Thank you.
Those are some really good, solid takeaways for our listeners.
I hope they can use this information to evaluate and strengthen their hearing conservation programs.
Yeah, occupational hearing loss is a really serious issue, but it's preventable.
It is.
If we take the right steps.
We have the knowledge and the tools to protect workers.
So let's all commit to creating workplaces where hearing protection is a priority, not an afterthought.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone.
Thanks for listening.
Until next time, stay safe out there.